I'll make it up to you. I'll make it up to you. I'll make it up to you.
You are watching Co-op for Two, broadcasting live from Champaign, Illinois, Wednesday, November 9th, 2022 at around 11 p.m. This is going to be a short session. If you've been following our play-by-mail plays, we've been playing two games from murdersbymail.com, which is a play-by-mail game. Took us 4 months to play, and we finished those games. And when you finish the game, you submit your answers to some questions on a website. It gives you a little epilogue online, and then that's it. The game's over. And then two things happened. First of all, it seemed like we could, through the website, make additional moves. So we submitted some additional moves at the end of both games. And I was curious to see whether the replies would keep coming even after the end of the game. So it turns out they won't. The game does know that you've finished, and they won't keep sending you replies, which is a little unfortunate because it would have been nice to go to a couple more places. However, what also happened is they sent a final letter for both cases. So today I'm going to very quickly do the final letter for Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. It's short, brief, it won't take us very long. And then just to separate that out from the people who might be watching one of our games and not another, there'll be another stream after this one at 11:45, so in about 40 minutes or so, where I'll open up and read the LA Noire epilogue. And it's short. I've taken a look at one of them. It's just a little bit of reading to wrap up the case, which is a nice idea. And then maybe we'll talk a little bit about the play-by-mail stuff. Although I did record a review, a spoiler-free review of both play-by-mail games from murdersbymail.com. I had some positive stuff, a bunch of, I would say, not so much negative, but lots of missed opportunities. And so we can talk about that if anyone has questions or just wants to chat about it, but do see that review. And before we get started, since this will be so short, I thought we might talk a little bit about Postmortem London Gothic. I have the books for that right here. And an interesting development with that game that's happened since our live playthrough over the weekend. So I thought we might talk about that a little bit. And I suppose we could talk a little bit about our plans for what to play next. I think I'm going to take off this weekend. I'll be getting together with some friends for a murder mystery dinner on Saturday here at my house. I'd love to film that, but my friends won't let me film. So I think probably I won't play anything this weekend, but I think the next game we'll play, well, high up in the queue, and there's a queue if you want to help us decide what games to play next. You can visit the Board Game Geek Guild for this channel. There's a link in the community tab. So another Deadbolt Mystery Society game I'd like to play next. I'd like to play the fan-made Burglary at Bellamy's fan-made case for Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. I think we'll play that very soon, definitely in November. And then maybe one of these other crime dossier games. Okay, anything else to catch up with on the chat before we get started here? Before we get started talking about Postmortem London Gothic, and then we'll get to the Sherlock Holmes. I'm not one for these sales. I tend to avoid this Black Friday and whatever, all that stuff. But I do think, because we've learned that these independent web companies that sell their own games, like Hunt a Killer, Deadbolt Mystery Society, tend to have big sales often. So, and Deadbolt Mystery Society in particular seems to have very good prices during sales. That's the one site I'll probably be sure to check out when the Black Friday sales, whenever that is, some weekend, some Friday this month in November. So my strategy for them now is, because I've enjoyed the last two games we've played for them, is to, if they've got a game on sale for $10, I buy it. So I've got a whole bunch of them now, and if more come on sale, you can see them right there. If more come on sale, I'll pick them up. All right. So before we get into Sherlock Holmes Fellowship of Bones play-by-mail epilogue, which will be short, let me give you a little update about Postmortem London Gothic. And here you can see the two books for that game with all the clues split into two books. Okay, so Jonathan is here. Jonathan and Tina joined me for the entire playthrough. Anna was here for half of it, and some others came by as well. This is the new game by the people, the Mysterious Package Company, who made the Postmortem LA series, which I have raved about every chance I get, and we played all three of those. They were about 15 hours each, and I posted a spoiler-free review of the series where I talked about them having some of the best writing in the entire genre. Just really great, captivating, and very compelling games. All right, so we've been looking forward to this one, which we've heard about for a year or so. At least 6 months, I think. Sort of resetting the series set back in Victorian times, connected to the Postmortem series. And we got it at the end, near the end of October, and we finally got around to playing it last weekend, or this past weekend, and it took us about 24 hours to play it. Over 3 sessions. So it was a very long game. I made a video of top 10 epic narrative mystery detective games, and this would have been right up there near the top in terms of length. All right, so we recorded 3 sessions of our playthroughs, and then we spent a good hour at the end talking about the experience. So what was the experience? Well, it was mixed. First of all, this is a very special series and a very special game. And if you love these long experiences like I do, Jonathan and I both love these super long single case experiences. And for that alone, it was really wonderful. And we really liked it. And there were lots of moments where we were chewing on it, trying to figure out things and stuff. But there were a lot of bugs in the clue books, mostly. And mostly book 2, split into 2 books, and lots of bugs of a whole variety of kinds, but a whole bunch that were fairly obvious typesetting problems, like pictures were on the wrong page. Sometimes they were on top of text. There were some paragraphs cut off in the middle. There were some places missing that should have been there. We spent a long time talking about it, and it did cause us some real problems in playing. Nothing that kept us from fully experiencing the game and finishing it, and nothing that kept us from really liking it. I mean, I really liked it. I'll play a long, deep game like this, flaws and all. I'll take it any day. But problems on a whole scale of stuff, but some very obvious printing problems, and then some other problems, and some critique. I think even without any of the problems, we'd have some critiques, but it would still be an amazing, amazing game. But we had a little bit of hesitation in recommending it. I mean, in fact, I really wouldn't hesitate to recommend, even if this is where it stood, I really wouldn't hesitate to recommend this to super fans of the genre that like long cases. But you would have to be prepared to handle these problems by improvising a little bit and not have the perfect experience. So I've been in a little bit of contact with the main writer. We think who's the main writer of these cases, a very nice person. I'm not going to mention his name here, but you'll see him revealed on my spoiler-free review of the Postmortem LA. I don't know if he's the primary writer here or one of the writers, whatever. Anyway, after we put up our 3-part playthrough, where we spent an hour talking about some of the problems and noting them, I got an email from him saying the company has seen our playthrough and they're embarrassed at how many errors snuck through. We made some theories about what we thought might have happened that were responsible for the errors. Essentially, not a huge mystery, but it seemed like maybe they tried to get it out by Halloween and it was just too tight a deadline. Anyway, what he said they feel bad, they're embarrassed, and they're going to take some drastic action to try to fix it. And in fact, a couple of days later, they sent out an email they pulled it from their website. They pulled the game from their website, which had been out for almost a month at this point. No, not a month. Sorry, hadn't been out for a month. Had been out since October 20th or so maybe 2 weeks. Anyway, they pulled it from the website and they sent an email to everyone who had purchased it. And they said, we're going to reprint a second edition, or at least I suspect most of the game is perfectly produced. It's just these 2 clue books. So the game actually comes with some box with some evidence of different types, directory, a whole bunch of stuff. All of that is actually perfect. It's just these 2 books. So I suspect they're going to reprint these books and mail replacement books to people. So they offered people in the email, they offered everyone a choice for a full refund or to wait until January. That's going to be their target, January 2023, when they're going to send out replacement, the new edition stuff and some bonus thing, and they apologize and everything. And they asked me if I would be willing to take down the videos at least for a while so that people don't get the wrong impression of the game before the new edition comes out. And I was happy to do that. So that's why those playthrough videos aren't up. So there you have it. And I posted my thoughts about that email and the plan, and I'm going to tell you them here. Yeah, we got plenty of time. Keep in mind, I have no relation with the company or the authors, no financial interest. I don't care what you do about any of this, but I'll just give you my view on this. To me, it's sort of a no-brainer not to cancel if you've decided to purchase it. If I didn't have it already and had the chance to order it now and get the old original edition and the new books, I would do that right now. So you might consider yourself lucky if you ordered it before this mess, because you're going to have 2 sets of books. I assume they're going to replace these books. Maybe they'll replace it with 1 book, whatever. But actually, it was quite fascinating to sort of peek behind the curtains when things broke and see what went wrong. And it actually might be, if you're interested in game design, quite fascinating to compare the original books versus the improvements and see what stuff they changed. But anyway, this was already a great game. I would have recommended it. And a lot of love and care went into this game. Well, less care at the end, but a lot of love went into this and some great writing. And it is a special game, especially if you like the long games. This is in a tier of, a handful of games. And so to me, it's sort of a no-brainer that if you love this genre, you'll want this game. The only case I could see for asking for a refund, well, I posted that there are 2 cases. One is if you woke up and decided you don't like mystery games at all anymore. But there is another case where you would want a refund, and that's if your group actually played through it as is, finished it, so you can't play it again, and hated it and had a horrible time because of the bugs. In that case, you have no use for a second edition fix because you've already played it. That would be a case where that's the only case I could think of where you might want a refund. It's also the fact, if you compare this to other games of this type from these companies, they sold it for pretty cheap. $50 is pretty cheap. They used to be selling their Postmortem LA for $70. Now they're on sale for $50. If you could get those Postmortem LA on Black Friday or whatever, that cheap or even cheaper, I recommend it. Those are some of my favorite games in the genre. So there you have it. It was actually quite fun playthrough, quite interesting, fascinating experience. I'm very curious to see what they change with the second edition. We're talking to Jonathan and I are writing up just a little summary of our thoughts on what we found that they might want to look into. There you have it. That's my opinion on it. I'd be curious to hear what you guys think. Anything in the chat to talk about it? Diane was just saying about how they're about her getting the email as well. Anything else to talk about? All right. Theo is talking in full caps. All right. Shall we get to what we came here for and take a look at this epilogue? Anyone want to say anything else about the Postmortem London Gothic? Jonathan, you want to add anything? This is a good example. If you watched it live with us, 24 hours over 3 days, you got to see something that is now gone from the internet. Although, I'll put it back up at some point. Jonathan and I were talking about how you can see why it might be dangerous to review an early copy of a game. It's not infrequent that board game reviewers get early access to a copy of the game, and often the publisher will tell them, hey, this is a early advanced copy, things will change. And more often than not, that's used as an excuse it seems like, to hide problems. It's very, very common. If it looks finished, it's finished. They're not going to be changing stuff. And you could imagine if we got this game early and we played it, we'd have to be much more reserved about complaining about bugs, and much, we would probably, every time we got to a bug, we'd say, this is probably something they'll fix. And so I do think this confirms to me how important it is for me personally to keep a little bit of arm's length from these publishers, not take free games, obviously not do any paid reviews, but even beyond paid reviews, not accept free games. So I purchased this myself. I think you can see where you would be affected by that if you got a free game or whatever. I mean, I already really like the author of these games, so it takes some work to be objective about this stuff. Jonathan just says, even with the bugs, it was an enjoyable world to try to solve a mystery in. Yeah, I really hope that this experience doesn't end up costing them so much money that they are discouraged from doing another game of this scope again. It's very rare to see games this ambitious, this long, big, deep, and rich, with so much going on, especially given that the writing is such high quality. So I really hope that people who are fans of this genre will be understanding of the company and encourage them to not be dissuaded by this from making more games in this series. I'd buy, as long as they keep making games in this series with this caliber of writing and ambition, I will be ordering them early. Okay, let's get to our Sherlock Holmes epilogue letter. All right, let's see if I can put this back as it should be. All right, so here we go. We're used to this kind of letter. Again, if you haven't played this game and haven't watched our previous playthroughs, this is the time to dip out, because we're going to read the solution again here. Okay, as normal. However, normally it would say turn 14, doesn't? Okay, now we open this up, and this is where it would normally tell us, here's where you sent each of the three people, with directions pointing where you sent them. You can see how this conclusion does it differently. It says solved. It tells us how many locations we went to, 42 in total. It tells us the score, which the website, both of these things, the website told us as well. 200 out of 200. That was a pretty easy case at the end. We knew the answers. Okay, and here's it looks like the shortest amount of time someone got a perfect score. They only went to 18 locations. Well, we took our time and went all over, but if you wanted to play this as quickly as possible, the fastest player did 18 locations. So what? That's about 6 turns, right? 3 locations per turn. So someone did it in 6 turns, which would be a month and a half. All right. Let's see. So you can see case notes, June, August. This is Watson's journal, it looks like. And what we've got here is, let's see if we do it this way. Okay, so a 2-page spread, just a very little pretty thing. We've got a note from Holmes to Watson, a note from Lord Kelvin to Holmes, and a newspaper article. So let's look it over. First, let's check out this note from Holmes to Watson. Here's a little something for your files. Have you thought of a name for the case yet? Holmes. And then he's got his final chess move, which mates and wins. Okay. So let's see what letter we got from Lord Kelvin, who was the person at the Burlington House Royal Society. Mr. Holmes, I'm writing to express my most sincere and heartfelt gratitude for your assistance in bringing Warren Edwards' killer to justice. I am also grateful to you for bringing to light the malfeasance of our secretary, Mr. Lawson. It pains me more than I can say to know that these dastardly acts were perpetrated by members of our esteemed society, but this pain is much preferred to the crimes remaining unsolved. What cannot be changed must be borne, as they say. You must surely think the Royal Society is no better than a den of thieves. The reputation of this venerable institution must be rehabilitated, and I intend to begin that process immediately. Please extend my thanks to Dr. Watson and your other helpers. I am forever in your debt. Yours in gratitude, Lord Kelvin. Lord Kelvin was a famous physics scientist. And here you go. Okay, so we got a thank you letter from the chairman of the society, and then we've got a couple of newspaper articles to read, which are here if you want to look at how they fit in. So let's read these. Arrest made in Royal Society murder. Sherlock Holmes strikes twice. An arrest has been made in the bizarre murder of Warren Edwards at the Royal Society. The culprit is another fellow of the society, one Richard Davidson, who has made a full confession to the police. His motive seems to have been revenge at being swindled by Mr. Edwards. Mr. Davidson testified to police that an investment in a diamond mine was taken on in bad faith, resulting in significant loss of capital. A resulting lawsuit was found in favor of Mr. Davidson, but the awards fell far short of recouping his losses. In recent weeks, ill feelings between the two men erupted into a bout of fisticuffs at the Hampstead Gentlemen's Club, an event which led to both being expelled from the rolls. His thirst for revenge not yet slaked? I thought sated was the word, slaked. Mr. Davidson used his position as assistant librarian at the Royal Society to procure a key to a side door to the Burlington house. He used this ingress to creep into the basement, where he struck down Mr. Edwards with a fossilized dinosaur bone before effecting his escape in a hansom cab. Scotland Yard has begrudgingly acknowledged the assistance of the famous consulting detective Sherlock Holmes in bringing Mr. Davidson to justice. Given our own past experience with both Mr. Holmes and Scotland Yard, one can only imagine that his efforts were vital in drawing the case to such a satisfactory conclusion. Mr. Davidson will be tried in the Old Bailey in the early part of next week. And there's an additional article here, Scandal at the Royal Society. Another scandal has rocked the Royal Society. In addition to the recent murder at Burlington House, in which an arrest has been made, the Secretary of the Royal Society, one John Lawson, was arrested yesterday on charges of embezzlement and petty theft. He is accused of being the perpetrator of a recent rash of thefts of pocket watches and other small items of value at both Burlington House and the Sheridan Gentlemen's Club, of which Mr. Lawson is a member. More serious, however, are the charges that he embezzled funds from the Royal Society for personal use. It appears that the expenses incurred by a crippling opium habit drove the once esteemed botanist to his life of crime. Lord Kelvin, the Royal Society's president, expressed his shock and dismay at the revelations and extended his gratitude and congratulations to Mr. Sherlock Holmes, who seems to have solved this mystery as a mere byblow of his murder investigation. Mr. Lawson's barrister, Mr. Douglas Straight, has proclaimed his client's innocence and promises a spirited defense in court. And then lastly, we've got a little side article here. Smuggling ring exposed at East India docks. Scotland Yard, with the aid of an anonymous letter of poor penmanship and grammar, have uncovered a smuggling ring at the East India docks. The harbor master, Ronald Prescott Jr., has been arrested and charged with smuggling and evasion of import duties. According to police, loads of spice from India have regularly been concealed amidst the packing materials of regular shipments. A large portion of these were animal skins, rock samples, and other scientific specimens bound for the naturalist societies that inhabit Burlington House. As such, other Confederates are suspected, but thus far, Mr. Prescott has not given up any of his co-conspirators. Police say the investigation is ongoing. So there you have it. A nice little wrap-up, told in different formats that wrap up our main little side stories. The murder, the opium addict John Lawson, and the tiny side story about the smuggling at the docks. A nice feature. Might have been nice if the game said when you finished it, "Hey, you're gonna get a final letter in the mail." I might have waited this before I did my review. It doesn't really change anything. It's just a nice little summary of the solution in character. They could have done this on the website, of course, but you're playing this whole game by mail where you have your final records when you're finished with it. It's nice to have this as well. So very nicely done. And that completes our playthrough of Play by Mail, Murders by Mail game, Sherlock Holmes Fellowship of Bones. You can watch my spoiler-free review to hear my final thoughts on the game. In 10-15 minutes or so, we'll read the L.A. Noire epilogue. Any final thoughts on the play-by-mail games? Diane says about the post-mortem, she wants to play the game. No problems waiting. Yeah, I hope most of the people will wait. Look, most of the people who play these experience games, they're sort of hardcore in them, and so it's hard to imagine why you would not wait around. I guess sticking with this postmortem LA thing for one more minute, one thing I should say is that that genre game, the Sherlock Holmes consulting detective games, have a long history of big bugs being found in games and errata. And Gumshoe, for example, has a notorious first edition that the designers said was almost unplayable. And there was an errata put out for that. If indeed they are going to ship people new books, that's what I expect. That should be commended, because they could have said instead they were going to write a PDF, a little web page with corrections, and that would be, then you'd have a much harder decision to make in terms of refund. If the only way to play this was with a print and play PDF big set of corrections, I think then I might be seriously considering, I might seriously entertain the idea of asking for a refund rather than that. But if they're going to send you new books, which it seems like they are, that seems like that's their plan, then it's a no-brainer to wait for January or however long it takes. Jonathan says, we sort of talked about how we wish we got some different types of documents in the mail. Here's an example of just the trifold letter, but different graphic design. So a little disappointing we never got anything like this while playing the case. Yeah, Jonathan's saying it's like even just having a different format, here getting different, it's still printed on this paper, but different format letters from different people. Even something like this would have been nice just to mix things up if some of our replies came like this. Like maybe sometimes someone maybe sent us a reply and said, I'm enclosing the snippet I found, or here's this letter I found on the ground. Yeah, I agree. That's one of the things that we missed that could have been improved. Any other comments about the play by mail? Anything in the that wasn't in the epilogue that we wanted to see? I like this little note about how Lawson is pleading innocent. Some of the more enjoyable old crime dossiers from the 1930s had long court trial reports that you could follow that were entertaining. I do wish that there might have been some. You could imagine that you might imagine that there would be some that you could make the case end in a way that let players make some final choices. Like there are a couple places we wanted to go to afterwards. I can see how that might be a little tricky to do, because you'd not want to give them replies, the same replies that they would have, not always appropriate to give them the replies they would have gotten to if they went and played it in game. But it might be nice to, well, it might be nice to have heard from Hudson and Wiggins and Watson at the end. They're these three people that we played with throughout this whole course for 4 months, and now they've disappeared. They've exited off stage and we didn't get to hear from them. That's going to be, that's actually something we were sad about with the LA case. At least with the Sherlock Holmes case, everyone, our three main investigators were in the denouement. They were in the final scene where we solved the case. In the LA Noir one, our three investigators just disappeared during the ending, and we never heard from them again. We never heard their final thoughts, or they weren't even present for the finale. So I hope we get lucky, and with the LA Noir case, I hope we hear from them. But I suspect we probably won't. All right. Let's end it here. I'll see you in 15 minutes or so for the LA Noir epilogue wrap-up. Thanks for joining me. See you soon.